Sorry?
Can you hear?
Yeah, no problem.
Okay.
What's the podcast about so I can share it?
Venezuela.
Okay.
All right, we are live. Conncast here with Black Swan Finances and Lazia, king of the internet. Today we're going to talk about Venezuela, the situation in Venezuela, the beginning, middle, and potential end of it, and how it may affect the energy sector depending on how things go in the near future. We're going to be keeping an eye on the chat this time, so if you have any questions, comments, want to join the conversation to a certain degree, feel free.
All right, let's do this.
So I think the best place to start
on the chat this time, so
Yeah.
would be Hugo Chavez. Chamo. He, according to the narrative, there's been a lot of conflicting information I've heard from people on this. He went to jail in the 80s, I think it was, for an attempted coup, and then eventually got out and was elected.
Well, I didn't know
Now-
that. Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, so he used, in the early 2000s, the oil revenue from Venezuela to sort of impose what he calls the socialism of the 21st century onto the country, which is great until oil starts sucking slew water and you got to pay the bills. Now,
That's right.
I think one of the
Venezuela,
issues was the Saudi Arabians lowering the oil prices, which caused a huge collapse in the oil economy.
yes,
2014, right?
yes.
Yeah.
And it was sort of going downhill before that too, just because of the entries into the market from U.S. fracking companies and some discoveries in Australia. Now, as far as that goes, most of Venezuela's oil was discovered in the late 2000s. So it was far after Saudi Arabian discoveries and even the newer American discoveries. Just there's less regulation. Most of it is fairly poor grade. It's a lot like the Canadian oil sands oil, but it's underwater, so it's even harder to get out. So using those high oil prices and nationalized oil, Hugo Chavez collateralized to accumulate some debt, and he became very popular in the process. Was elected, I think, 3 more times.
Correct.
And then went and died and left the country to his bus driver friend, who likes to take his political memos on mangoes. Maduro. So what do you guys think about Hugo Chavez himself? About what you know about his policies? What do you guys think about the decisions he made, as well as him as a person?
Well, I don't know him as a person, but his policies seem to have high approval rates since he got elected 3 times. So he did better than the previous leaders. So I guess he was better for Venezuela than the previous leaders. And I guess you can give him credits for that, even though he might have not took the fully correct economic decisions. He made a change which rose up the economy for the Venezuelans from the previous leaderships.
Lazia has a point when the status quo candidate is very unpopular, which before that, most of Venezuela's candidates were sort of neoliberal, really like the US sort of candidates. When they're really unpopular, the change candidate just sweeps, like cleans house. That's what happened with Bush going into Obama. Bush was very unpopular, and Obama was the change candidate. McCain was obviously the status quo candidate. And that's what happened with Obama and Trump to a certain degree, I think.
Yeah, it's the same. I mean, he actually was elected 4 times.
Yes.
So that is just like
And he
Lazia
also-
says. Yeah, People liked him a
There,
lot.
there used to be a 2-term limit in Venezuela, and he won the referendum to make it a unlimited term limit.
Yeah, he did a good job in that regard. However, the economy, as we now know, it's like the worst performing economy in the entire planet.
Yeah, no, it's worse than Haiti. It's worse
Yeah.
than Zimbabwe. It's,
At this very
they'd
moment,
actually be
yes.
better off with a Mugabe,
Mhm.
and that's saying something at this point. Hugo Chavez was, most of the people I talk to are detractors of Hugo Chavez, but he was fairly charismatic. He had a very man of the people sort of air to him, and he did a radio show every week to answer questions in the main plaza. So there is that. Now, what do you guys think about the future of Venezuela? Do you think Maduro is going to, continue his military first policies to continue grasping at straws for power? Do you think he may get ousted by the US? Do you think he'll get ousted by his own people? What do you think is going to happen?
You want to go? I can go.
I guess he still has some sort of popularity since they are still keeping him in power. Usually, when a dictator doesn't have much popularity, they overthrow him, just as we see in Africa happening all the time. Most of the economy's failure, I would blame on the US sanctions. As you can see, when the US sanctions you, you're basically fucked. They sanctioned Russia, and Russia's economy went downhill a lot, even though they are a major superpower. The US coalition sanctions can down economies within weeks or even days. I think one of the major issues in North Korea too is the US sanctions. I think the Venezuelan people are quite angry because of his sanctions, and that's why he's still holding this popularity as a man of the people who will not sell them to America. But I think America will eventually get rid of him and either fund rebels to get rid of him or assassinate him, and they've done that in previous times. And I think the markets will open in Venezuela, and I think it's not gonna last long.
I agree that he might get ousted by the U.S. sometime soon, and also he has this kind of cult of personality. He's very popular again, so.
I really like his mustache. I do admit I really like Maduro's mustache.
Yeah, it's not bad.
It's no Stalin, but it's okay. I personally think that the US will not oust Maduro until the Saudis let oil prices go up again, because the Saudis initially tried to flood the market with oil to crush the US production because they figured it was more expensive for the US to take oil out of the ground than it was for the Saudis. And it didn't really work. The US is still going strong. They've got Keystone going in. They've got XL, is it called? The Standing Rock one?
XL.
Going in thanks to Trump. And if Venezuela reopens to the US market and the world market, then oil's just going to hit rock bottom, supply and demand.
Right.
I believe the whole Saudi Arabia thing was towards Russia's sanctions and not towards America, because Russia is a big part in the natural resources and oils, and the low prices in oil have also downed Russia's economy alongside the sanctions. So I think that was again Americans' game to down sanctions in another country and destroy their economy.
Yeah, building on Lazia's point from before with the U.S. sanctions.
Yeah.
A very valid point. That's how Rhodesia went down. That's how Norway, without U.S. sanctions, that's how they survived being pretty much communist. So very good point there.
Oh,
Now-
yeah, and actually yesterday they imposed even more sanctions. Did you hear that? I just read on the news that yesterday they announced more sanctions for Venezuela because the soldiers are trafficking food trafficking right now
Yes.
going on. They're
I knew,
selling the food at exorbitant prices.
I knew a Venezuelan girl that lived here, and she was actually registered for the military. She was anti-Chavez. She was actually pretty base, but she said that the soldiers and Maduro charter private jets to go to either Trinidad and Tobago or Miami, and just load them up with groceries and sell them to the locals at exorbitant prices.
So that's why there's new sanctions coming.
Yeah. And it was rough for quite a while. I mean, I remember that they were that the country of Venezuela owed airlines various tariffs and landing fees that they couldn't pay off. So, like, I mean, when your country can't even pay off some private companies, things are pretty rough.
Oh yeah, they're going downhill at this moment. It's free fall.
Now, do you think that the U.S. will make their greatest attempts if Venezuela comes back on the market to slow the fall of oil prices? Or do you think that'll be an oversight and it'll just hit rock bottom?
I think the US will down Venezuela and they'll dictate the oil prices.
Mm-hmm.
My connection's it's a bit choppy. I'm going to have to reconnect. I'm just going to reconnect.
All right, go for it.
I think they'll try to open Venezuela's markets. When they open the markets, they will have a big influence over their oil markets and other products. They done that before with other closed market countries like Chile and Pinochet. He opened the market for Argentina.
They'll probably privatize the oil company too, because Venezuela has nationalized petroleum. Because that's what they always tend to do.
They'll probably put an
Chile,
American.
the big thing was copper mining.
Yeah, Chile has a lot of resources.
Yeah, I'm back.
All right. Better connection this time?
I think so, yeah, thanks.
Anyways, they'll probably privatize the petroleum companies, and in my opinion, that's what they've been doing for a while. That's what they've been trying to do with the Syrian rebels. And they've done that in the Middle East too. It's just if they can't do it with sanctions, they do it with guns, right?
I think that's what's going to happen. I think they're going to be privatized for sure. Nicolas is out of the game.
Now, as far as standard of living right now in Venezuela goes, let's talk about that for a minute. It's illegal to own US dollars in Venezuela, technically, from my understanding. And the rate of exchange officially, if you were going to go to a currency trader and trade US dollars for Venezuelan bolivares, last time I checked, it was 10 bolivares to the dollar. But that is not the case in real life. If you're doing it black market, and I've got people that'll sell me bolivares, it depends on the day, but it's between 2,000 and 5,000 to the dollar. So
yeah,
really
I even heard that it was like 10,000, but it might have been exaggerated.
No, I don't doubt it. My connections think it's going to bottom out again towards the end of February.
Their new inflation rate is around 800. I just checked from the trade economics. 800%.
Oh yeah, 100% inflation.
Dead.
Yeah, that's lovely for what was even left of the middle class. Put your money in silver, gold, and Bitcoin, folks.
No, not even kidding. I mean, if they would have purchased those three things, let's say a year ago, 2 years ago, you know where they would be now? They would be in heaven.
Yeah.
I mean, the people who would have done it.
Yeah. And I know some people who did do it, and now they aren't in Venezuela. Needless to say, they're 15 minutes away from where I live.
Oh, they're in there where you live?
Yeah, there's so many that it's becoming a problem. They're like the Mexicans of Panama.
Jesus Christ.
I don't mind when Venezuelans that have skills come over and make their own jobs, but really what I hate is when they come over and they're still gung ho chavista, and then they get citizenship in 5 years.
It's also annoying when they flee a country with certain politics and they vote for the same politics in the host countries.
Yeah, no, it's like it's the same thing as the Muzzies.
Yeah.
Yeah, no. Oh, I hate everything about this country. Venezuela is so much better, but I came here.
Exactly.
Yeah, that doesn't make any sense.
Like at the beginning of El Crisis, it was mostly doctors, lawyers, and industrialists. But now the lower classes are, some of the lower classes and the lower middle class are doing whatever they can to get out of there.
Yes. Socialism does take its very big toll on the middle class, since it kind of lowers the wages that potential doctors who are very good at their job can make, so they move out of the country.
Yeah, absolutely.
And they
did the same thing with.
Class.
Yeah, they did. They did a similar thing with a refinery. Actually, before Chavez even died, all the refinery people, their wages were going down, and the rest of the people's wages were going up comparatively. So most of the people that were qualified to run a refinery left and went to mostly Alberta, actually. So who are they left with? Some unskilled laborers. And Chavez hired them to do the refinery. And the refinery exploded 3 weeks later.
Exploded.
Yeah.
I mean, they did expand on their schools and other public works from the previous president before Xi. I mean, that's an achievement, in all honesty, regardless of the economy.
Yeah, that's, the Venezuelans, I know, say, one thing that Chavez did is now Venezuela is a country that has good roads, has good schools, has good public buildings. It's just there's no one qualified to run and maintain them.
Yeah, and in a couple of years they're gonna decay and rot.
Yes.
Because a country that
their hydroelectric projects are running at like 20%. Their irrigation projects are derelict, which is causing food shortage.
It's the same thing as the Eastern Bloc. After the collapse, everything was like ruined.
Yeah,
there's no
a
maintaining,
lot of
there's no
it
nothing.
still is.
So it's because there's no maintenance there. The rich are just getting all the Eurofunds and putting it in the pockets. One of the funny things is I'm from a East European country, and you go down the road and like half the road is done. Half the road is done, the other half is not done because they only spend like half the money, and they say, well, we're going to need more money, and they get more money, then they only spend that half the money. So they like take twice as much and they take half of it from themselves.
When I was like, 15 and first getting into economics, I looked up different wages in different countries and such. And I was actually surprised to find out that most of the second world is pretty much the same or less of real wages than the third world now.
Oh, I hear you.
I think it's because the third world is not getting exported with these sweatshops, which are booming their paychecks by a couple of pences, but still.
Yeah.
I wouldn't want to work in a sweatshop.
Yeah, I'm sure, like a country that comes to mind when you talk about Venezuela and the infrastructure is Cuba. Cuba also had a lot of infrastructure, but a lot of it is like dilapidated, just like in Eastern Europe. Places dilapidated overall.
Yeah, a lot of Cuba, a lot of it was from the USSR's aid drying up, which is a little bit of a different beast. But the USSR's aid drying up and oil prices drying up, causes different, results pretty similar.
Right, similar, yeah.
Now, there's a lot of misinformation on both sides of the coin about Hugo Chavez and Nicolas Maduro, depending on who you talk to. I find that if you don't name names and you ask about them, if you take out the names and you ask a right winger about them and a left winger about them, you barely get any overlap whatsoever. Which, even with Fidel Castro and Joseph Stalin and who else is there? Even Adolf Hitler, Benito Mussolini. You're going to get some overlap, whoever you talk to, about historical events and how things happened. But it's just interesting to me how Chavez has caused that divide.
Yeah, I believe that that comes all the way from Chavez. He was somebody who would surround himself with some kind of mysticism, and conspiracy theories about the U.S. and assassination attempts.
Oh, well, like Gaddafi.
Yeah.
Very similar to Gaddafi in quite a few ways.
I like Gaddafi.
As far as
he had a good idea about the dinar. I mean, the gold currency, right?
Yeah, that's what they hate the most. They hate gold currencies.
Of course, that's why they killed him. Yeah, they stole his gold.
Yeah.
He was also a very big protester.
He also kept all the blacks out of Europe for quite some time, and he was fairly conscious of that. Like, not all of them, but
a big
not
part.
like the flood they're seeing now coming across in little boats.
Yeah, because when they had a country like Libya in Africa that's stable, has jobs and offers people benefits.
Gateway to Europe.
Why would they go to Europe when they can stay in their climate, their culture? Rather go to
Libya.
And even the border controls from Morocco and Libya and Egypt before the Arab Spring kept a lot of sub-Sahara out of the European sphere.
Yes, it did.
As far as the rest of Latin America, and more specifically South America, if Maduro goes down, what do you think the effects that reverberate will be? Do you think people like Evo Morales will become...
I think there'll be a lot of fleeing and immigration.
From where?
Venezuela. Once a country collapses fully, people just tend to run away from that country. I think that's a typical mentality of South Americans. Like in Mexico, they, instead of building a country up, they flee somewhere else. In Europe, we have a different mentality. As you can see, Germany, the Treaty of Versailles, they build their nation into the most advanced nation from jack shit, run buildings, bomb cities. Then the National Socialism, they build their nation up to the most advanced nation on the planet in a couple of years. And that's a mentality difference, I think, in South America. They're going to flee from the collapse. While in Europe, we have a total different mentality of rebuilding and nationalism. Thing with South America is there's so many mixed ethnicities. They don't really define themselves as nationalistic. You can't really bond people together since everyone's so different. There's no really religious strengths or cultural strengths that will bond the nation together like Europe.
Yeah, I'm sure that's what's going to happen. And we don't have I come from Latin America, and It is true. There's so many different ethnicities down there, and there's even, like racism and segregation between the different even social classes and skin colors. So we have white Mexicans and black Mexicans, like darkies, right? And I believe they're gonna flee. Yeah, for sure. It's gonna be a mass exodus. Did I just lose Connor? Hello? What happened?
Sorry, I was muted. Can you see the comments? I guess everyone left. Okay, Rudy memes. Could it be the case that this kind of thinking is because Latin Americans have more of a chance to move to a different area due to having greater diaspora in places like the US and Australia? I don't think that the diaspora between, if you're talking about that there's lots of Venezuelans in Australia and America, I don't think that is the issue, because there's all kinds of Europeans around Europe. There's hundreds of thousands of different communities in different countries made out of different ethnic groups of Europeans, yet the mentality stays the same, that patriotic, you should stay and help your country rebuild. Now, that can be a downfall, since countries like the Eastern Bloc are really corrupt, and staying there really isn't helping your country. It's just wasting your time. But people still do it anyways, because it's their moral duty. They're built in like that. It's their culture to stay there instead of move around. I think it's the history, religion, and the tradition that keeps them to stay there, to love their country, especially when countries have fought for years over lands and different areas, different beliefs, different politics in Europe. And when they fought for thousands of years, they decided to build in this blood, there's gene of patriotism. This is my country, this is my land, and I'm going to stay here a while. In Latin America, you don't have that as much. There's different kinds of people, religion, natives, Spanish, Portuguese, and the nations are not that different to each other. They're similar ethnicities, similar issues, similar problems. So moving wouldn't be this kind of a patriotic difference if you leave your country and go to the neighboring country, since you're probably going to have a similar tradition, similar culture, and similar history.